Shalom. This is the Parsha Themes Shir, and this week we'll be covering Parshas Bamidbar and the holiday, the festival of Shavuos. The Shir is for the Refuah Shalema Bimheira of Moshe Shimon ben Leah Esther Chaya and Harav Naftali ben Silka Leah. So first of all, the Parsha starts by talking about the Mishkan, the Tabernacle, and we compare it to the revelation at Mount Sinai, the giving of the Torah. So one of the main themes of the fourth book of the Pentateuch, which is Bamidbar, in the desert, or Numbers as it is more commonly known, is the symbolism of the Mishkan. The intent was that the holy service in the Mishkan and later in the temple would be a constant reminder of the closeness the Jewish nation achieved with the Almighty at the giving of the Torah. Now we talk about the relationship between God, man, and the Jewish people. The unfortunate pattern from the beginning of creation is that God creates order, but humans, by way of Adam's sin, the evil generation of Noah with the resulting flood, and subsequently the generation of the Tower of Babel, always create chaos. The new order described here in Bamidbar is that God becomes not merely the director of history and the giver of laws, he has become a permanent presence in the midst of the camp. Hence the building of the Mishkan, which takes up the last third of the book of Shemos and the laws of purity and holiness, as well as those of love and justice that constitute virtually the whole of the book of Vayikra. Purity and holiness are demanded by the fact that God has become suddenly close. In the tabernacle, the divine presence has a home on earth, and whoever comes close to God must be holy and pure. Now the Israelites are ready to begin the next stage of the journey after a long introduction. That long introduction at the beginning of Bamidbar is all about creating a sense of order within the camp. Hence the census and the detailed disposition of the tribes and the lengthy account of the Levites, the tribe that mediated between the people and the divine presence. Hence also in next week's parsha the three laws: restitution for theft, the sota, and the Naaseh, directed at the three forces that always endanger social order: theft, adultery, and alcohol. It is as if God was saying to the Israelites, this is what order looks like. Each person has their place within the family, the tribe, and the nation. Everyone has been counted and each person counts. Preserve and protect this order, for without it you cannot enter the land, fight its battles, and create a just society. Tragically, as Bamidbar unfolds, we see that the Israelites turn out to be their own worst enemy. They complain about the food. Miriam and Aaron complain about Moses. Then comes the catastrophe, the episode of the spies, in which the people, demoralized, show that they are not yet ready for freedom. Again, as in the case of the golden calf, there is chaos in the camp. Again, God threatens to destroy the nation and begin again with Moses. Again, only Moses' powerful plea saves the day. God decides once more to begin again, this time with the next generation and a new leader, Joshua. Also, in later history, the story repeated with the exiles. And so the Jewish people keep repeating the story told 5 times in the Torah. God creates order, humans create chaos. Bad things happen, then God and Israel begin again. Will the story never end? One way or another, it is no coincidence that Bamidbar usually precedes Shavuos, the anniversary of the giving of the Torah at Sinai. God never tires of reminding us that the central human challenge in every age is whether freedom can coexist with order. It can, when humans freely choose to follow God's laws, given in one way to humanity after the flood, which is the 7 Noahide laws, and in another way to Israel after the Exodus. The alternative, ancient and modern, is the rule of power, in which the strong do as they will and the weak suffer as they must. That is not freedom as the Torah understands it, nor is it a recipe for love and justice. Each year, as we prepare for Shavuos, by reading Parshas Bamidbar, we hear God's call. Here in the Torah and in its mitzvahs is the way to create a freedom that honors order and a social order that honors human freedom. There is no other way. Now we go on to talk about the census as described in our parsha. The massive, miraculous increase in the size of the Jewish nation from 70 souls to between 2 and 3 million just 210 years later proves that Hashem loves his people Israel. Each member of the nation wanted some personal attention from Moshe and Aaron, and the census gave them the opportunity to appear before the leaders. The general message of the census is that every single Jew is precious to God, and that every one of us has our own unique personal spiritual mission, whilst also recognizing that by acting together with others, we can achieve even more. Generally, the census was required in order to prepare the nation for the war of conquest, which was scheduled to ensue when they entered the land of Israel, until the sin of the Meraglim, the spies, derailed that plan. The pasuk says, "Su es rosh," conduct a census, but it literally means lift the head of the people. This can either mean to elevate their spiritual level if they proved worthy, or figuratively to remove their heads from their bodies. In other words, to bring suffering upon them if they break the holy covenant with Hashem, as per the language used to describe the sad end of Pharaoh's baker. The earlier censuses counted the nation as a whole, while this one recognized their separate tribal identities. What is the difference? This is because now the Mishkan had been established as the central focal point of worship, and it acted as a unifying force. The unique roles of the various tribes would be expressed in their different ways of service, but wouldn't result in the factionalism and nationalism that may have occurred before the building of the Mishkan. Now, how was the census done in practice? The pasuk says, the verse says, "Al pi Hashem," by the voice of Hashem. Why does it say that? There was an issue that Moshe wasn't able to enter every tent to count the family inside, both logistically and because there was an issue of tznius, privacy and modesty. So Hashem provided the solution. Moshe waited outside each tent, and a baskol, a voice from heaven, told him how many people were inside. But in that case, why was such a complex method required? Why couldn't Hashem have told him the final numbers in one go? So this comes to teach us, as we see elsewhere, the example of teaching that we first need to do our own hishtadlus, to make our own efforts in order to elicit a response from on high. Now, be careful of the company you keep. The Midrash Tanchuma states, "Fortunate is the tzaddik, the righteous person, and fortunate is his neighbor." And also it teaches woe to the wicked and woe to his neighbor. So the first pronouncement is regarding Moshe and Aaron, and wicked to the neighbor, woe to the wicked and woe to his neighbor is talking about Korach. So the tribes of Yehuda, Issachar, and Zevulun were fortunate to be encamped together with Moshe. Thus their good influence saved them from sin and resulted in them becoming great Torah scholars. Whereas the tribe of Reuven was encamped near the Kohathites, which included the family of the evil Korach. Many of them thus fell prey to and joined Korach's rebellion. Now, the Levite population growth compared to the other tribes. The Levite population grew normally. Now they were at about 22,000 at the time of the census, because being spared the suffering of the other tribes in Egypt, they weren't blessed with the extraordinary growth indicated in the verse. The more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more God made them fruitful. That's from Shemos. Now, the symbolism of the protection of the tabernacle. The people's encampment on all four sides of the tabernacle symbolized how they protected the holy edifice and the Torah that resided in its innermost sanctum. Certainly the Torah does not need our protection. On the contrary, the Torah and its commandments protect us. However, God chose to entrust us with the noble mission of protecting the Torah. Similarly, we must guard our personal inner sanctuary within our hearts and within our homes from all four sides, from cool spiritual indifference on the cold north, from hot lustful passions on the warm south, from self-gratification over brilliant accomplishments on the morning east, and from dark despair on the evening west. Now we go on to talk about Shavuos, the festival which begins this coming Sunday evening. Acquiring Torah. The sages taught that the Torah was given with three things: with fire, with water, and in the desert. These three elements reflect three aspects of the proper attitude that one must develop in order to fully acquire Torah. The first element is fire. This symbolizes the passion that one must feel for Torah. A person should engage in Talmud Torah, in learning Torah, with diligence and effort, hasmoda and amelus. He should approach each day of Torah study with a newfound exhilaration. Rashi comments on the pasuk, on the verse in Shemos, on this day they came to the wilderness of Sinai. Why does it say on this day? To highlight that the words of Torah should be fresh and exciting as if they were given to you today. What's more, Torah should be seen as something precious. Shlomo HaMelech says, King Shlomo, if you seek it as if it were silver and search for it as if it were hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of Hashem and discover the knowledge of God. That's from Proverbs. Only if one appreciates the priceless value of every word of Torah will he truly acquire its knowledge. But fire also alludes to the fact that one has to be willing to sacrifice in order to accomplish in the study of Torah. Nullify your will in the face of his will, it said in Pirkei Avos, in Ethics of the Fathers. One should always be willing to sacrifice his personal desires to fulfill the Ratzon Hashem, the will of God. But this is especially true regarding Talmud Torah, the learning of Torah. The words of Torah are retained only by someone who kills himself over them, it says in Gemara Barachos. The sages say that Yaakov Avinu did not sleep in a normal fashion for the whole 14 years he studied Torah in the yeshiva of Shem and Ava. Jacob serves as a model of how every Jew on his own level should be willing to give up some of his time, his comforts and his conveniences in order to accomplish in his Torah learning. The second element with which the Torah was given is water. This symbolizes the thirst a person should feel for words of Torah. Chazal, our sages, comment, V'yigdu l'rov b'kerev ha'aretz. May they proliferate like fish in the midst of the land, when he's talking about the blessings of the Jews. Just as fish grow in water, but when a single drop falls from above, they receive it thirstily like one who never experienced the taste of water in all their days, so it is with Klal Yisrael. They grow in water, in Torah. But when they hear a novel matter of Torah, they receive it thirstily like one who has never heard a matter of Torah in all their days. One should thirst for Torah not only because he feels excited for every new idea of Torah, but because he feels that Torah is a necessity, like water, without which he simply cannot exist. Now, Naaseh ve-Nishma. That's what the Jewish people said at Mount Sinai. We will do, and then we will attempt to understand. But we will do first without asking anything about what we are instructed to doing. The giving of the Torah is entirely predicated on emunah, on faith. The other nations asked what was in the Torah and rejected it based on their own evil proclivities. How were the Jewish people able to accept the Torah on complete trust? The answer is because we had the confidence that Hashem, the ultimate benefactor, wouldn't impose upon us any rules that we were incapable of carrying out. So now, preparation for Shavuos, for the giving of the Torah. How do we prepare ourselves for the Shavuos experience? which aspects of our Avodas Hashem, our divine service, require the most emphasis. Unquestionably, we must approach our limud Torah, our Torah learning, with a profound sense of passion, diligence, and commitment. We must perceive Torah study as an act of Kabbalas Pnei Hashchina, the receiving of the divine presence. Tikkun Hamidos, which is perfection of character, is a necessary condition for Kabbalas Torah, for receiving the Torah. Commenting on the teaching of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Im ein derech eretz ein Torah, in Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of the Fathers, Rabbeinu Yonah explains, Torah einenu shochenes lo'olam b'guf she'einu ba'al midas tovos. Torah can only reside in a Baal Midas Tovos, which is one who possesses a refined or exemplary character. Both limud Torah, the learning of Torah, and Tikkun Amidas, the fixing of our character traits, require our constant attention and concern. Just as the Torah characterizes the weeks of Sephira, the counting of the Omer, as Tamimus, whole, perfect, so too our commitment to limud Torah and Tikkun Amidas must be incessant and continual. Torah and humility. All that bonds us is Torah. Nothing else has proven capable of holding the Jewish nation together for more than a generation or two, other than Torah. Nothing else other than the same Torah that first forged us as a nation. The Pasuk says, V'yadaber Hashem el Moshe b'midbar Sinai. And Hashem spoke to Moshe in the Sinai desert, saying. Now, why does it specify in the Sinai desert? We know where they were. So the lesson is, if we want to hear Hashem speaking to us, we have to make ourselves like a midbar, like a desert. In other words, desolate, ownerless, and completely open, with no sense of self-importance. Torah is like water, flowing from high to low, and is absorbed by someone who is dato shefela olav, who is of a lowly spirit, it says in Gemara Tainis. In Pirkei Avos it states, Ma'od ma'od have shval ruach. One should be exceedingly humble of spirit. Hashem spoke to Moshe in the desert to teach us that one who does not transform himself into a desert, something which is hefka or ownerless, cannot acquire wisdom and Torah. The connection between humility and Torah acquisition is found in a number of Talmudic passages. The Gemara in Eruvin states that one who makes himself like a desert, which all can step on, is given Torah as a gift. Rashi explains that such a quality indicates a lack of arrogance. Another similar passage is found in the Talmudic prayer, with which we conclude the Amidah, the standing prayer. May my soul be like dust, which everyone can step on. Open my heart to your Torah. Also in Gemara Besachim, it states, humility is a prerequisite for Torah knowledge, and haughtiness can cause wisdom to be lost. Hashem confined his revelation to Moshe, speaking to him from within the tent, the Ohel Moed, the sanctuary, because modesty is beautiful. The proof text, and walk humbly with your God, from Micha, shows that Hashem too walks humbly and modestly, so to speak. The honor of Torah itself, referred to as the Bas Melech, the child of Moshe the king, is inward, panima, it says in Tehillim. The beauty of modesty, or tznius, is cited by Rashi in Shemos in the context of Kabbalas Torah itself, of the giving of the Torah itself. The first luchos, tablets, which were given publicly with great noise and fanfare, were overcome by the evil eye and destroyed. The permanence of the second luchos, the second tablets, which were given privately to Moshe, demonstrates that nothing is more beautiful than modesty. As we read Bamidbar and prepare for Shavuos and our own personal Kabbalas Torah, we should look at our own great Torah scholars and leaders as role models. It is no coincidence that our greatest sage, Moshe Rabbeinu, was also the humblest man who ever lived. It is stated clearly in the Torah. We must learn from Hashem himself and walk modestly with him. As he modestly hides his greatness, so too we must avoid flaunting our accomplishments. Modesty in our actions is a reflection of humility in our hearts. Now, the worthiness for receiving the Torah. The Torah describes the Jewish people's journey to Mount Sinai to receive the Torah. They had departed from Rephidim and had arrived in the Sinai desert, camping ve-Yahanu in the wilderness. Israel camped opposite the mountain, it says in Shemos. Our sages in the Mechilta, prompted by the Torah's apparent linguistic inconsistency in shifting from the plural ve-Yahanu to the single ve-Yehan, comment that when the Jewish people arrived at Mount Sinai, they achieved a remarkable degree of unity, hitherto unattained. They were as one person with one heart, hence the shift from the plural to the singular form of speech. It is abundantly clear that this remarkable achievement did not coincidentally precede the giving of the Torah. Rather, it was a requirement for the giving of the Torah to the Jewish people, who, unified, emerged as a distinct metaphysical entity. As long as divisions and divisiveness separated Jews, they remained individuals, unworthy of the Torah. The Jewish nation crystallized and became worthy of the Torah when this remarkable state of unity was achieved. Now, treasuring our individuality while serving the community. The Ramban, in his commentary, explains that counting each individual is acknowledging that each person has self-worth, importance, and dignity. You are not only important because you are part of the nation of Israel, but you have your own purpose and mission as well. The sages tell us, "Kashem she'ein partzufehen shavin, kach ein datosehem shavin." By this, they mean that each person is unique, not only physically, but in intelligence and character as well. Because each person possesses a unique temperament, his spiritual challenges and his yetzer hara, or evil inclination, are also relevant only to him. Therefore, each person's service of God is different from everyone else's. While the book of Bamidbar begins with the important message of the worth of each man individually, each person is counted also as part of Bnei Israel, of the children of Israel. This dual nature might well be compared to a symphony orchestra. The ultimate beautiful end result is the integration and blending of each instrument. However, unless each musician fine-tunes his or her instrument and practices to perfection, the sum, which is even greater than all its individual parts, will be lacking. On the one hand, we have stressed our own individual avodas Hashem, our service of Hashem. On the other hand, the greatness of Kabbalas Torah is ka'ish echad belev echad, joining with the rest of the Jewish nation. How is one to budget his time and energies between their own needs for growth and those of others? The Maharsha, in his commentary on Sanhedrin, suggests that Adam la'amel yulad, people are born to work. La'amel is an acronym for lilmod al menas lelamed, to study and master in order to share and teach to others. What scale should we use to determine how to balance our personal studying, which, as we know, never ends, and our communal responsibility, which likewise seems never ending? So just as in the physical or material realm, we are commanded aser to aser, to tithe our possessions, meaning to take tenth, on behalf of the Levites and the poor, depending on which year it is, and are promised that doing so will bring us blessing, so too, regarding the realm of the soul, we are to give a tenth of our time to helping others. Giving to others is the best way to ensure one's own wealth. Moreover, the more we give, the more we are promised God will bless us. There are two different ways to serve God. One is to isolate oneself from the community and focus completely on oneself. The other way is to be involved in and with the needs of the community. Logic dictates that the former will excel to develop himself and his true potential, while the latter, involved with the needs of others, will not be able to attain that level of greatness and maturity. The reality, however, points out the Midrash, is just the reverse. Through our helping others, we ultimately help ourselves the most. Thank you for watching. Please join us next week for Parsha Naaseh. Have also a great Chag Shavuos, a great festival of Shavuos. Take care.